My name is David, and if someone had told me a year ago that my life would unravel the way it did, I would have laughed in their face. I was 42, a husband, a father of two, and to anyone looking from the outside, I had what most people would call the perfect life. A stable job, a decent house in the suburbs, a wife I had loved for nearly 2 decades, and children who were the very center of my world. But perfection, I would learn, is often an illusion. Beneath the surface of what looks polished and whole, cracks can run deep, silent, invisible at first, until one day the entire structure collapses. I remember the morning it all began. It was a Sunday, late spring, the kind of morning where the world feels calm and forgiving. My wife, Mary, was in the kitchen, pouring coffee. She smiled when I walked in, but it wasn't the smile I had known for years. There was something behind it, an absence, maybe, or a distance that I couldn't put a name to yet. At first, I brushed it off. Marriage isn't always fireworks and fairy tales. There are seasons of silence, moments when the love is quieter. I told myself this was one of those times. But something inside me shifted that day, a quiet warning that I ignored. Over the next few weeks, little things piled up. Mary started guarding her phone. She'd tilt the screen away when a message came in. She began working late more often, though she'd never had to before. Her laughter was different too. Lighter, somehow forced, like she was acting out a role she no longer wanted to play. I tried to dismiss the doubts, but they grew louder. My stomach knotted whenever she left the room. At night, I'd lie awake, listening to her steady breathing beside me, wondering who she truly was in those moments when I wasn't around. One evening, I asked her directly, "Mary, is something going on?" I kept my voice calm, though my heart was hammering. She looked up from her phone, her eyes wide, almost offended. "What do you mean? You've been different lately." "Distant. I don't know. Just tell me if there's something I should know." Her face softened then, but only slightly. She reached across the table, placed her hand on mine, and said, "David, you're overthinking. Work's just stressful, that's all." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But her hand was cold, and the reassurance felt rehearsed. Still, I swallowed my doubts and nodded, because the alternative, the idea that she might be lying, was unbearable. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday night, Mary told me she was meeting a friend after work. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, like she always did, and left. But something about the way she avoided my eyes lingered in my chest like a weight. An hour later, I picked up my phone without thinking and opened the family locator app we had installed years ago when the kids were younger. Mary's location blinked on the map, not at a restaurant, not at a friend's house, but in the parking lot of a hotel. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to breathe. 1,000 thoughts crashed over me, but none of them made sense. My hands shook as I placed the phone back on the counter. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she was meeting a client. Maybe. But even as I reached for excuses, I knew. Something inside me broke that night. A quiet fracture that would only widen with time. And that Thursday night, as I stared at the little blinking dot on my phone screen, the world I thought I knew began to collapse. Mary's location sat firmly at a hotel a few miles from downtown. I told myself it could still be nothing, but deep down, I knew. Every instinct in my body screamed at me that the truth was sitting there in front of me, cold and undeniable. For 20 minutes I sat paralyzed on the couch, the silence of the house pressing in on me. The kids were asleep upstairs. The clock ticked too loudly. My hands trembled. My mind raced with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Finally, something inside me snapped. I grabbed my car keys and drove. The roads blurred beneath me, but the blinking dot on my phone was steady, unwavering, dragging me toward the truth I had avoided for weeks. My chest was tight, my throat dry, but I kept driving, telling myself I had to see it with my own eyes. When I pulled into the hotel parking lot, my heart nearly exploded. There, parked 2 rows away, was Mary's car. No mistaking it. The little dent on the rear bumper I'd promised to fix, the faded parking sticker on the windshield, it was hers. I sat in my car with the engine off, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Minutes crawled by. I wanted to storm inside, demand answers, catch her in the act. But another part of me was frozen, terrified of what I might actually find. The hotel lobby glowed softly in the distance, and every time the glass doors opened, my breath hitched. Strangers walked out, couples laughing, businessmen with briefcases, but none of them were her. And then, after what felt like an eternity, I saw her. Mary walked through those doors, her head tilted toward a man beside her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that caught the light as he leaned close to her. They were laughing. Her laugh, that laugh I hadn't heard in weeks, the one that used to belong to me. She touched his arm as they stepped into the night, and the way he looked at her told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just a mistake. It was intimacy. It was connection. It was betrayal in its purest form. My stomach lurched. I wanted to burst from the car, scream, demand an explanation. But instead, I sat frozen, every muscle locked, watching as they walked toward his car, oblivious to the man whose life they were shattering just a few yards away. When his hand slid to the small of her back as she laughed again, I felt the ground give way beneath me. I drove home in silence, my vision blurred, my chest hollow. The house was dark when I returned, the children still asleep upstairs, innocent and unaware. I stood in the living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. Christmas mornings, birthdays, vacations where her smile seemed so real, and wondered when it had all become a lie. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the memory of what I had seen looping endlessly in my mind. Every detail, every laugh, every touch replayed like a cruel film I couldn't turn off. When Mary finally came home hours later, she moved quietly through the house, slipping off her shoes, placing her purse gently on the counter. She thought I was asleep. She didn't know I was sitting in the shadows, watching. She didn't know I had seen everything. The moment Mary stepped through the door that night, her perfume drifted into the room, sweet, floral, unmistakable. The same perfume she had worn on our anniversary dinners, on nights when she wanted to feel desired. Only now, that scent was poison. I sat silently in the dark corner of the living room, watching her move across the floor. She didn't notice me at first. She slipped her phone from her purse, tapped the screen, and smiled faintly at whatever message appeared. My chest tightened at that smile. It wasn't for me. It hadn't been for me in a long time. Mary. Her name came out of me like a stone thrown into still water, breaking the silence. She froze. Slowly, she turned toward me, her eyes widening when she saw me sitting there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked too loudly on the wall. "David," she whispered, her voice uneven. "You scared me. What are you doing up?" I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, my voice low but trembling with rage. "Where were you?" Her mouth opened, closed. Her fingers tightened around her phone. "I told you. I was with." "Don't," I cut her off sharply. "Don't lie to me. Not tonight." Her face paled. She took a step back, as though the truth itself had weight and was pushing against her chest. "I saw you," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to hold steady. "At the hotel, with him." The silence that followed was unbearable. She didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She didn't even try. Her lips parted, her eyes glistened with tears, but the only sound in the room was my own ragged breathing. Finally, she whispered, "David, I'm sorry." Those words shattered me more than if she had screamed in anger. Sorry, just sorry, as if that could contain the betrayal, the months of lies, the destruction of the family we had built together. "How long?" I asked, my voice low, almost a growl. She hesitated. Her silence was an answer in itself, but when she finally spoke, it was worse than I had imagined. "Almost a year. A year. 12 months of dinners, holidays, moments where I had kissed her good night, never knowing she had already given herself to someone else." My vision blurred. I stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Who is he?" Her voice broke. "It doesn't matter." "WHO?" I roared, my fist slamming against the wall. She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. "His name is Mark. He works at my firm." Mark. The name was venom on my tongue. I repeated it, spat it, as though saying it out loud might strip it of power. Do the kids know? I demanded. She shook her head furiously. No. God, no. They can't, David, please. They can't know. Not yet. I stared at her then, this woman I had once trusted more than anyone in the world. She stood trembling, her mascara streaking down her face, begging me to protect the lie that had already destroyed me. And I realized something in that moment. I didn't know her anymore. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger. That night, I didn't scream anymore. I didn't curse, didn't throw things, didn't collapse into the begging wreck I wanted to be. Instead, I went upstairs, checked on my children still peacefully asleep in their beds, blissfully unaware that their world was crumbling, and then I shut myself in the guest room. I lay there until dawn, staring at the ceiling, every breath heavy with betrayal. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing would ever be the same again. The following days were a blur of silence and tension, the kind that seeps into every corner of the house. Mary and I barely spoke, our words clipped, mechanical, as if even basic conversations about the kids, about dinner, were too fragile to hold under the weight of what had happened. Every time she looked at me, her eyes full of guilt, I felt a storm rise in my chest. I couldn't touch her, I couldn't even stand too close without feeling sick. And yet, I couldn't stop watching her, searching for pieces of the woman I had once loved, the woman who had been my partner, my friend, my safe place. But she was gone, or maybe she had never been there at all. I found myself retracing the past year, digging through memories like shards of glass, cutting myself with every realization. The late nights, the sudden interest in going to the gym, the unexplained weekends with her friends. The way she had started pulling away from me in bed, saying she was tired, saying she wasn't in the mood. It had all been right there. I had just refused to see it. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I went to the study and opened Mary's laptop. My hands shook as I typed in the password. I had memorized it years ago, though she didn't know I still remembered. Her email was open, and there it was. Hundreds of messages, some short, some long. Some full of longing, others full of passion. Photos, plans. I miss you. Last night was incredible. When can we get away again? My stomach twisted. I scrolled and scrolled, each word burning itself into my brain. I had thought I was prepared, but nothing could have prepared me for the intimacy of their words, the way they spoke to each other like they were building a future, my wife and another man. At one point, I had to push away from the desk and run to the bathroom, retching until there was nothing left inside me. When I finally returned, I sat staring at the screen until the words blurred, until the rage inside me began to solidify into something else. Not just anger, not just grief, but resolve. I needed to know everything. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. I checked phone records, bank statements, receipts. I discovered hotel charges, restaurant bills, little gifts I had never seen. The lies spread across months like a trail of breadcrumbs, each one leading further away from me and deeper into him. Every discovery was a dagger, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't look away. Mary noticed, of course. She saw the darkness growing in me, the way I withdrew even further. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes red, her voice trembling. "David, please, talk to me. We can fix this. I'll end it with him. I'll do whatever it takes." Her words were desperate, but they rang hollow. I stared at her, my heart a battlefield of love and hate, of longing and disgust. "You don't get it," I said finally, my voice breaking. "It's not just what you did, it's what you destroyed. You killed us, Mary. You killed everything we had." Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I never stopped loving you." I almost laughed, almost, but the sound that left me was somewhere between a sob and a growl. "Don't," I said, turning away. "Don't you dare say that. Not after everything." That night, I slept in the guest room again. The walls closed in around me, and the house no longer felt like home. I was a stranger in my own life, trapped in the wreckage of what used to be. And yet, despite the pain, despite the rage, part of me still clung to her. To us. To the hope that maybe, somehow, we could piece it back together. But hope, I would soon learn, can be just as destructive as betrayal. A week later, The cracks in our home began to spread beyond the walls of my marriage. The silence, the tension, it seeped into everything, and the kids, though young, weren't blind. Children can sense more than we give them credit for. One evening, my daughter, Emily, tugged at my sleeve as I tucked her into bed. She was only 10, but her eyes carried the weight of something far older. "Daddy," she whispered, "why are you and Mommy always sad now?" The question pierced me deeper than any blade ever could. My throat closed, and for a moment, I couldn't answer. Finally, I smoothed her hair and forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Sometimes grown-ups go through hard times," I told her gently, "but no matter what, I love you. And your mom loves you too. That will never change." She nodded slowly, but the doubt in her little eyes broke me in half. I left her room and went straight to the kitchen, where Mary was rinsing dishes. I slammed my hand against the counter, making her jump. "They know," I hissed. "The kids feel it, they feel everything." Her shoulders slumped, her voice small. "I'm sorry, David, I'm trying." "Trying?" My voice rose. "You're still talking to him, aren't you?" She froze. It was all the answer I needed. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You promised you'd end it. But you can't, can you? You won't." Her tears came again, but I was beyond pity now. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "Yes, it is," I snapped. "You choose. Him or us. Right here, right now." Her silence was a dagger. She stood with her head bowed, her hands trembling, and I realized with a clarity that made my blood run cold she couldn't let him go. I turned away before she could see me break. That night, I packed a bag and slept at a friend's house for the first time. The emptiness of that guest room was suffocating, but at least it was honest. At least it wasn't tainted by lies. But distance didn't bring peace. It only made the nightmares worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together laughing, touching, living a life where I was erased. The next morning, I returned home to grab a few more things, and as I walked in, I caught a glimpse of Mary on the phone. She was in the hallway, her voice low, urgent, her tone soft in the way it used to be with me. When she realized I was there, she ended the call abruptly, her face pale. That was it. That was the moment something inside me hardened into steel. "No more lies," I said, my voice cold. "If you don't tell the kids what you've done, I will." Her eyes widened with horror. "David, please, they can't. They deserve the truth." I cut her off. "They deserve better than to live in a house built on secrets." She fell to her knees then, sobbing, begging, but I walked past her, my bag in hand, my heart in ruins. Because in that moment, I knew. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with, had already chosen. And it wasn't me. The day I decided to confront him was cold, gray, and heavy with rain. It felt like the sky itself knew what was about to happen. I had his name, Mark. I had his workplace. And I had an anger inside me that refused to stay buried any longer. I drove to his office just before noon, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't have a plan. I didn't care. I just knew I needed to see him, to look into the eyes of the man who had stolen my wife, my marriage, my life. When I walked into the sleek, glass-paneled lobby, a receptionist looked up, ready to greet me. But before she could, I saw him. Tall, confident, laughing with a colleague as he adjusted his tie. He looked normal, ordinary, but to me, he was the embodiment of betrayal. "Mark," I barked, my voice echoing through the lobby. He turned, confusion flickering across his face. "Yes?" I closed the distance between us in 3 strides. People stopped, watching, but I didn't care. I was trembling, my fists clenched, my throat raw. "You know who I am," I spat. Recognition dawned in his eyes. His smile vanished. "David," he started carefully. "Listen." "No," I cut him off, my voice sharp as a blade. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to explain. You destroyed my family. You touched what wasn't yours." The lobby had gone silent. Phones paused mid-scroll. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every eye was on us, the furious husband and the guilty lover. Mark raised his hands slightly, a pathetic attempt at peace. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Mary and I, we didn't mean." "Don't," I growled. "Don't say her name. Don't pretend it was an accident. You knew she was married. You knew she had children. And you still did it. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. That silence was louder than any confession. For a moment, I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to. My fists ached with the desire to break his smug face. But then I thought of my kids. I thought of the courtrooms, the headlines, the shame. Instead, I leaned in, my voice low, trembling with rage. You may have taken her body, her time, her lies. But you'll never have her soul. And you'll never take my children. Do you understand me? He nodded slightly, his eyes flickering with something that looked almost like fear. Good, let him fear me. I turned on my heel and walked out, the rain pelting my face as I stepped back into the storm. My chest was burning, my hands still shaking, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of control. But that control was short-lived. Because when I got home that night, Mary was waiting for me, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. You went to see him, didn't you? She whispered. I said nothing. I didn't need to. She covered her mouth with her hand, trembling. David, you don't understand. It's not just an affair. I love him. The words hit me like a hammer, shattering the last fragments of hope I had clung to. Love, she said she loved him. Not me, not us, him. In that moment, something inside me died. The house was unbearably quiet when Mary finally confessed the words that gutted me. I love him. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed, but my body was paralyzed. Those 3 words echoed in my skull, tearing through every memory, every promise, every kiss. Finally, I spoke, my voice hollow. You don't get to say that in this house. Not in front of me. Not after everything we built. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She reached for me, but I stepped back, revulsion coursing through me. David, please, she sobbed. It's complicated. No, I cut her off sharply. It's simple. You made a choice. You chose him, and now you've lost me. Her body shook as she crumpled onto the couch, her sobs filling the room. I turned away, unable to bear the sight. But before I could retreat to the guest room again, a small voice drifted from the staircase. Daddy? My son, Matthew, stood halfway down the stairs, his eyes wide and frightened. He was only 8, but in that moment, he looked older, like he had just stepped into a world he shouldn't have seen yet. Why is Mommy crying? He asked softly. My chest tightened. I glanced at Mary, who was frozen, her face pale. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. Go back to bed, buddy, I whispered. It's late. But he didn't move. Did I do something wrong? The innocence in his voice broke me completely. I rushed to him, kneeling, pulling him into my arms. No, Matthew, you didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. Over his shoulder, I saw Emily standing at the top of the stairs, tears streaming silently down her face. She had heard everything. She knew. The truth was no longer hidden. The walls of secrecy had collapsed, crushing us all beneath them. That night, I sat with my children, holding them close, while Mary stayed in the other room, her sobs muffled behind a closed door. I wanted to protect the kids, shield them from the storm, but it was too late. The storm had already consumed us. When I finally tucked them back into bed, Emily grabbed my hand. Her voice was quiet but steady. Daddy, are you and Mommy going to stay together? I froze, the weight of the question pressing down on me like 1,000 pounds. My lips trembled, but I forced myself to answer honestly. I don't know, I whispered. And that was the truth. I didn't know, but deep inside, I feared the answer. The morning after my children overheard everything, the house felt like a graveyard. Silent, cold, heavy with sorrow, Mary came into the kitchen while I was pouring cereal for Matthew. Her eyes were swollen from a night of crying, her hands trembling as she gripped the counter. David, she whispered, we need to talk. I looked at her, then at Matthew, who was crunching loudly, pretending not to notice. I shook my head. Not now, not in front of him. She nodded quickly, guilt painting her face, and retreated. Later that afternoon, when the kids were at school, she sat across from me at the dining table. The same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. But today it felt like a courtroom. Her voice cracked as she began, I don't want to lose this family. I made a mistake, no, a series of mistakes. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for one last chance. I stared at her. Part of me wanted to laugh at the audacity. After months of lies, after shattering our children's innocence, she wanted another chance. But another part of me, deep, buried, desperate, wanted to believe her. Wanted to hold on to the woman I had built a life with, the mother of my children. Why, Mary? I asked, my voice raw. Why him? Why risk everything? She closed her eyes, tears spilling. I was lonely, David. You worked late, you traveled, you became part of the furniture. Reliable, steady, but invisible, he made me feel alive again. I know it's selfish, I know I destroyed us. But I never stopped loving you. Her words stabbed deeper than any knife. I never stopped loving you. How could that be true when she had betrayed me in the worst way? I slammed my fist on the table. Love isn't sneaking around in hotel rooms. Love isn't lying to your husband and children. Love isn't this. She flinched but didn't move. You're right, she whispered. But love is also not giving up when everything feels broken. Please, David, don't give up on us. For a long time, I couldn't answer. My heart was a battlefield, torn between fury and longing, between pride and love. Finally, I stood. I need time. Her lips parted, desperate. How much? As long as it takes. That night, I walked the streets alone. Neon lights flickered above bars and shops, strangers laughed, life carried on as if my world hadn't collapsed. I thought of Emily's question, are you and Mommy going to stay together? I thought of Matthew's trembling voice, did I do something wrong? And I realized, this decision wasn't just about me. It wasn't even just about Mary. It was about the two innocent souls upstairs who didn't ask for any of this. I couldn't let my pride destroy their childhood. But I also couldn't let my weakness chain me to a lie forever. I had to find a middle ground, a way forward that balanced truth, justice, and maybe, redemption. The hardest part was that the choice wasn't just mine. It was ours. A week passed in a haze of silence. Mary tried to act normal, cooking dinner, folding laundry, tucking the kids into bed, but I could see the strain in every movement. Her hands shook when she held a spoon. Her eyes darted to me constantly, searching for signs of forgiveness that weren't there. The children, too, sensed the storm. Emily grew quiet, withdrawn. Matthew became clingy, shadowing me from room to room as though I might vanish. The weight of it all pressed on me like an iron cage. Finally, one Sunday evening, I couldn't bear it any longer. We all sat in the living room, Mary on the edge of the couch, the children beside her, and me standing, pacing, my heart pounding against my ribs. I can't keep pretending everything is fine, I began, my voice trembling. The truth is out now. We can't hide from it anymore. Mary clasped her hands together, her knuckles white. Emily stared at the floor. Matthew fiddled nervously with his toy car. I drew a deep breath. Your mother made a mistake. A terrible mistake. She hurt me. She hurt this family. And we all feel it. Mary's tears began to fall, silent but relentless. But, I continued, my voice softening, families aren't about never making mistakes. They're about what we do after. Whether we give up, or fight to rebuild. Emily looked up, her eyes red. Are you leaving us, Daddy? The question pierced me to my core. I dropped to my knees in front of her, taking her trembling hands in mine. No, sweetheart, I will never leave you. You and Matthew will always have me. Always. Her tears broke into sobs as she threw her arms around my neck. Matthew joined us, burying his face in my chest. For a moment, it was just us, the three of us clinging to each other in the ruins of a broken home. When I finally looked up, Mary was shaking, her hands covering her mouth. She whispered, "Does that mean?" I swallowed hard. "It means I'm willing to try. Not for you, not even for me, but for them." I glanced at the children. They deserve to see us fight for this family. Even if it kills me inside, I have to try. Mary collapsed into sobs, sliding off the couch to the floor. Thank you, David, thank you. I swear I'll prove it to you. I'll cut all ties with him. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I won't waste this chance. I didn't move toward her. My arms were still wrapped around my children. But inside, a small flicker of something stirred, not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, from the ashes of betrayal, something new could be built. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. Mary and I began therapy, sitting in that quiet room with a stranger who peeled back every layer of our pain. Sometimes I hated being there. Sometimes I hated her. Other times, I hated myself for not being strong enough to walk away. But every time I looked at Emily and Matthew, I knew why I stayed. They were my anchor, my reason to fight through the storm. Her voice trembled, but there was hope in it. I looked at her and felt something loosen inside me. I kissed her forehead and said, "We're broken, but broken things can be mended. It just takes time." She smiled faintly, and in that smile, I found my first taste of peace since everything shattered. 6 months later, Mary and I renewed our vows, not in some grand ceremony, but in our living room, with just the kids watching. She looked me in the eyes, tears falling freely, and promised again to love, to honor, to fight for us. This time, her words carried the weight of all we had endured. There were nights I woke up drenched in sweat, hearing the echo of her betrayal like a gunshot in my skull. Mary would reach for me, whispering apologies into the darkness, but I would turn away, unable to let her touch me. Forgiveness, I realized, was not a switch I could flip. It was a long, brutal road I had to walk one step at a time. One evening, months later, I found myself sitting in the backyard watching the sunset. Emily sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. She was 13 now, wiser than her years. "Daddy?" she asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart, are we going to be okay?" Her voice trembled, but there was hope in it. I looked at her and felt something loosen inside me. I kissed her forehead and said, "We're broken, but broken things can be mended. It just takes time." She smiled faintly, and in that smile, I found my first taste of peace since everything shattered. 6 months later, Mary and I renewed our vows, not in some grand ceremony, but in our living room, with just the kids watching. She looked me in the eyes, tears falling freely, and promised again to love, to honor, to fight for us. This time, her words carried the weight of all we had endured. Did I forgive her completely? No, not yet, maybe not ever, not in the way people imagine. But I chose to stop letting the betrayal define me. I chose to build something stronger on the ruins. Because redemption, I learned, isn't about erasing the past. It's about facing it, scarred and trembling, and still daring to walk forward. Today, as I write this, years have passed. The scars remain, but they no longer bleed. Emily is in college now, Matthew is finishing high school. Mary and I are still together. Not perfect, never perfect, but real, raw and honest in ways we never were before. Sometimes, late at night, when silence fills the house, I still feel the echo of that betrayal. But alongside it, I feel something else, strength. The secret that once shattered my life became the fire that reforged it. And in that fire, I found myself again.